Okay, let's dive right in. For the better part of a decade, we've all lived through a massive revolution in how we watch TV. It was an era of seemingly endless choice, with epic shows right at our fingertips. But that era is over. Today, we're going to get into the dramatic story of the streaming wars, how our entire TV experience was turned upside down, fought over, and is now changing forever.
So, here's how we're going to break down this whole battle for your screen time. First, we'll look at the golden age that set our expectations so high. Then, we'll watch the all-out war for subscribers. After that, we'll see the big turning point when the money train finally stopped. Then, we'll look at the new world order that's taking shape. And finally, what all of this really means for you.
All right, let's set the stage. We're going to rewind to a time not so long ago, an era of just unprecedented creativity and quality that completely changed what we thought television could be. This period gave us these landmark shows, stuff like The Sopranos and Breaking Bad. It was all about complex characters, movie-level production quality, and these huge, sprawling stories you just had to follow. It totally raised the bar for what we expected from TV. And the main catalyst for all this? A company that, believe it or not, used to mail us DVDs in those little red envelopes. Yep, Netflix. They pretty much single-handedly shifted how we watch stuff, moving us away from rigid TV schedules to a world of instant gratification. This is what gave us the binge watch and made Netflix the, quote, primary curated video entertainment provider. And then things changed almost overnight. Once the old-school media giants saw what Netflix was doing, they all wanted a piece of the action. HBO was one of the first to jump in, but 2019, that was the real starting gun. Disney and Apple hit the scene, and by 2020, the battlefield was getting seriously crowded. Which brings us to the absolute peak of the conflict. This was a time of just unbelievable spending, super aggressive competition, and this frantic, no-holds-barred fight for every single subscriber. So here's a little snapshot of the battlefield from back in early 2021. You've got the king, Netflix, with this massive army of over 200 million subscribers. But look at the challengers, right? Disney Plus, with a way lower price, just exploded to 100 million in record time, while HBO Max came in with a premium price, really banking on that prestige brand. Now, each side had a totally different strategy. Netflix's main weapon was just sheer volume, cranking out a constant fire hose of new original shows and movies. Meanwhile, its rivals, they basically weaponized our nostalgia. Disney and Warner Media just threw open their vaults, using decades of beloved characters from Star Wars and Marvel to Game of Thrones. $17 billion. Get this, that's how much Netflix alone spent on content in 2021. I mean, that one number really says it all. It perfectly captures the growth at all costs mentality that defined this war. Profit wasn't the goal. Subscriber numbers were, and they were willing to spend absolutely astronomical sums to get them. But here's the thing about a war like that, a war based on growth at all costs. Eventually, the bill comes due. You just can't spend endlessly. And a moment came when Wall Street's entire way of thinking just flipped. So what was it? What stopped the music? Well, it wasn't some gradual slowdown. It was one single shocking event. One number that sent a shockwave through the entire industry and completely changed the game. In the first quarter of 2022, for the first time in over a decade, Netflix didn't just grow slower, it actually lost subscribers, 200,000 of them. That one number sent investors into a panic and signaled an abrupt end to the streaming wars as we knew them. The game was officially different. The new command from Wall Street was simple. Stop burning cash and start making money. And so, almost in lockstep, every major streamer pivoted. Subscription fees started climbing. The big password sharing crackdown began. Cheaper plans with ads were rolled out. And most importantly for us, budgets got slashed and shows started to just disappear. And the result for viewers was immediate and honestly pretty dramatic. Check this out. In 2022, at the absolute peak, there were 633 new scripted TV seasons in the US. Just 1 year later, that number plummeted to 481. That is a huge drop in the amount of new stuff being made. The era of peak TV was over. So what does the battlefield look like now after the war? Well, the dust is starting to settle, and what analysts are predicting is a future that's smaller, more consolidated, and very, very different from the crazy explosion we all just lived through.
One analyst, David Offenberg, thinks the future is going to shake out into these four distinct buckets. You'll have a few giant premium everything stores like Netflix. Then you'll have smaller, really targeted niche services for, say, horror or anime fans. Then you have free TV with ads. And finally, a totally separate world for live sports.
And that first bucket, the premium one, that's where the biggest shakeup is coming. As Offenberg predicts, there just isn't room for everybody. The market that started with one king and ballooned to 8 or more major players, it's expected to shrink and shrink dramatically. Not everyone is going to make it. So, based on what the analysts are saying, you can start to place your bets on who the winners will be. Netflix and Disney Plus are pretty much considered safe. HBO Max, which is now just Max, is also a likely survivor. But services like Peacock, Paramount Plus, and maybe even Apple TV Plus, they might be facing a future where they either get bought up or merged into a bigger competitor. Okay, this all sounds like a bunch of industry talk, but how does this new world order actually change what you see on your screen and how much it costs? Let's bring it all home. This is the new reality. There's going to be less choice overall as services combine. Shows you love could literally just vanish from a library because the company wants to save money on licensing, like we saw with hundreds of Sesame Street episodes on HBO Max. We're going to see fewer risky experimental shows. And weirdly enough, a huge boom in old, familiar comfort TV, like Suits, which was the most streamed show of 2023. And that leaves us with this really stark final thought from analyst David Offenberg. It's a provocative take, for sure, maybe even a little pessimistic, but it really forces you to ask the question, was the peak of the streaming wars, that chaotic, expensive, content-flooded moment, was that the best it's ever going to be for us, the viewers? Is the golden age of choice really behind us?